This is Batman calling from Wayne Manor with a special announcement. From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. And their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. And our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
Vicki.
And I'm Jen.
You are, and we are. Anyway, we have a guest this time, and he is a professional racing driver. He is a racing coach. He has competed in almost everything I can think of as far as race cars, road courses, oval tracks, off-road, shifter cars, GT cars, NASCAR trucks, Formula cars, Baja buggies, which sounds like way too much fun, even hill climbs. I don't think there's anything left. In 2008, he had a bummer of a season. He only won 70% of the races he entered in the Spec E30 class and was the national champion. In 2009, he set the lap record at Road Atlanta in the Trans Am Series. Don't worry, guys. We're only halfway there. We got more. Won his first ever entry at Mid-Ohio in the World Challenge GT Series. He's raced with the Pirelli World Challenge GT
Look, he's getting
Series.
a little embarrassed right now.
I
Look
know.
Keep going.
Do you not want to share with everybody else and let somebody else win?
The man's done a lot.
That was going to be a biography intro.
It is. It is. Baja 1000. Check that off the list. He won that in 2012. Oh, my goodness. We're just going to say this. He's won a lot. He's won the Prototype Challenge at Petit Le Mans in 2019. In spite of this, he still finds time to save cats from trees. He's taking on global hunger, climate change, and world peace, and then we'll solve interstellar issues and trying to figure out what's wrong with the DC and Star Wars movie production. So with that, the Superman that we've ever had on our podcast, we welcome Mike Skeen. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Quite the intro.
It's
Tell
impressive.
me about it.
I don't even think we've entered that many races that you've won, but that's,
I think it's safe to say you like racing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a lifestyle now.
I'm thinking you might have a future in this stuff if you stick with it. Try a little, give it a run. So usually I say I'm horrible at intros, but I got a lot of research done on you. It was quite easy. It was like win this, win that, enter this, win that. So we pretty much covered your professional racing life. Is there any family life or professional life outside of racing that you'd like to talk about? Or
there's not a whole lot of professional life outside of motorsports. It's all motorsports for me. Other
Focused.
Than that, just girlfriend Kelly here. We live in Charlotte and ride mountain bikes a few days that I'm home a week, and that's about it.
I'm just sitting here laughing at what Bill just wrote on our note. Just like, it's his part-time. He saves cats from trees and recently taken global hunger, climate change, and world peace.
You see, the best part about this, Mike, is I can say the words like 20 seconds ago. She doesn't hear a thing, but she reads the document and then she sees it.
So funny.
Okay. You can't tell we're married at all.
Well, for a second there, I thought you would talk to my girlfriend with the cats from trees stuff. Because when we bought this house here, we kind of inherited a cat that came with the barn. So, but yeah, no, we didn't so much save her. She just showed up and wanted food.
Saved you guys.
See, that cat inherited you.
Exactly.
Tough cats work.
She's pretty good at taming the wildlife around here. So
That's a good thing. You don't want any critters eating your race car wiring or anything.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family life, your racing life, from your perspective?
Vic, we just did this one.
I know.
Or
Okay.
how did you get into racing? How did you get the racing bug?
So my dad was a car guy and mostly a BMW car club kind of guy, and had done like a track day or two before I was even around, and then was going to do autocross, and just it kind of ran into some guys that were doing karting. And so he started doing some kart racing, and then I would follow him to the kart track. And this was back when he was in the Navy. We were renting a pop-up camper to go to the track and putting the go-kart on top of the pop-up camper, and off we went. And so there were a couple of years of that, and then I convinced him I should race too. And so I raced a little bit, and we both started doing that. And then I had a younger brother that started doing it for a little while. And then when he retired from the Navy, we moved pretty close to VIR, which was awfully convenient. So I started going to some track days there. And then I went to school down in Atlanta and met a bunch of people in Atlanta. Went to Road Atlanta a bunch, and just, instructing, doing driver schools and stuff. And then built myself the Specky 30 you mentioned, 07, 08, ran Specky 30, and just kind of started meeting people that wanted me to coach them or drive their car, race their car. And so I kind of, snowballed up the ladder, if you will, getting into faster and faster race cars, and eventually getting paid for it. And, just a few steps, I guess, along the way that kind of helped propel me along to, keep making it a career rather than just, kicking stones down the road, making it a hobby. But I just have been fortunate to meet the right people, right time, and be able to do it for a long time now.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've had a lot of guests that have gotten into it through go-karting.
Yeah. It's, it's hard to beat the bang for the buck there.
Yeah.
It's definitely a proven path towards getting to be good at it. Wish we would have done it.
So do you take on many more responsibilities from the team? I mean, you build your own cars also?
No, I work on my own little project crap, but not really any of the stuff that I race. I'm comfortable working on cars, but now don't really have that responsibility as far as the cars that I'm racing. So, I've got street car projects and just junk that I work on, but all the race cars and race teams that I work with, pretty much either coaching or driving only. And so some of the teams that I work for, like Junior 3 Racing, as one of my primary kind of customers that I do, they have a big vintage fleet of customer cars that they go vintage racing with, and then they also have prototypes that they race, customer cars that they race, and I coach those guys and help them kind of set up the cars, drive them, get the work with the engineer and help develop the setup side of the car, and then also working on drivers development as well. And then teams like the TA2 with Stevens Miller Racing, Liqui Moly car that I drive, that's just purely driving. They've got a few other customer cars that here and there I'll coach, depending on what their needs are, but no team management or anything at this point.
You're just living your dream, aren't you?
It sounds a lot more glamorous, but there's certainly work days involved, but mostly, it's the pounding the phones and just staying on email and staying current with everybody and trying to, keep the network strong so opportunities pop up and don't fizzle away.
Yeah, that's probably a job unto itself. Never mind staying in shape for racing, practicing racing,
Yeah.
So you got 4 or 5 jobs, so that explains it. Okay.
Yeah. So how did COVID affect your race season last year?
It was interesting for sure. So we were at the St. Petersburg race when it first kind of kicked off and everything started really getting canceled. We had already shown up there. It was Wednesday or Thursday or whatever, and that was the week that they canceled the Sebring 12-hour, which is a week later. And so I was there coaching for a Porsche Cup team. We had done our first practice day, and then all of a sudden, like, everything went quiet. The promoters were like, we don't know what we're doing here. We don't know if we need to cancel or not. And so we were all up in limbo and basically spent a whole nother day at the track with nothing going on because they weren't sure if they were going to let the event happen. And then they canceled it on the Friday and we all flew home. And from that day, which I think was like the 13th or something of March last year, we were pretty much nothing going on for a month and a half, 2 months. And then it started to get free enough that we could at least kind of rent some tracks and do some testing, do some coaching with some of the guys that, in smaller groups and, all that. But even then it was still pretty limited. So I would say up until May, June last year was pretty, quiet. And then we started to get a few on the TA2 program. They started rescheduling a few races. And so I think we started back in June or July. That was our first race back with that. But yeah, I mean, all year long, like it was just constant schedule changes. IMSA did a bunch of schedule changes throughout the year. And so it was, a real struggle when I've got, 3 or 4 different kind of full-time all year long programs, and you're trying to match calendars, and even that is hard enough at the beginning of the year. But when it all just gets, thrown cat amongst the pigeons, middle of the year, and it's constantly changing, that was pretty tough. Not to mention all the test days midweek and stuff, and trying to coordinate all that. But so, yeah, I mean, eventually it turned out that we did about as many events as we had planned. They all just got packed into like 6 months instead of the whole year. So it was certainly really, really busy for a while.
Yeah, the HPDs actually, I think, did pretty well last year, only because people were kind of hitting those more than the racetracks because of the amount of people that you were able to be around. It was just more controlled.
Yeah, certainly, a lot of the race events were unusual, and how a lot more regulation obviously about who can go where and how many people, especially IMSA was really restricted to how many people could be from each team could come, and so there's no extra staff, you're very skeleton crew kind of deal, and everybody was kind of kept separately, more so than normal, and their fans obviously at most of the venues. A few states here and there we could do it. We'd have a few fans, limited numbers, but like I didn't go to Watkins Glen at all last year, which is really unusual for me. And obviously a bunch of Canada stuff got canceled and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it was unusual for sure, and a struggle and a bummer, but overall, with everything that went on in the world, I'd say we took it pretty lightly.
Yeah.
So how does your upcoming schedule this upcoming year look for you?
Actually pretty good. Still already we've seen a couple reschedules already. IMSA's changed a few dates late in the year, but the TA2 calendar is really long. Looks like hopefully we'll get all those in. We have a date in California that's still up in the air, and then Canada late in the year. Hopefully we can get that one in. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it looks really strong. I've got that full TA2 deal, and then IMSA coaching full time for a bunch of teams, and probably will drive a couple of those later in the year, maybe a couple SRO races too. And so pretty busy, normal schedule.
Well, that's good. It's like things are starting to get back on track.
Yeah, pretty much. Certainly we've been doing a lot of testing and stuff too. So, when there are fewer race events, the guys still have the itch kind of to go play. So we tend to find other ways to get out there and do something.
Do you have any new builds this year?
I don't personally. I'm doing new stuff to an old build that I have. I've got this E28 BMW. That was actually my first car ever, street car. So 86 535. And it went through a phase where I turbocharged it and had a bunch of fun with that. And then I got bored with that and did a V8 swap, and it's had now 3 different V8s in it. And that is all kind of staying as is for now, but I'm doing new suspension and new wheels and stuff. So nothing major, but just
a suspension for a V24 is going to be pretty impressive. So, Any bucket list items you haven't gotten to do yet? It seems like you've got all the ones I can think of.
Well, certainly Le Mans would be a big one. I'd love to do Le Mans 24, Nürburgring 24. Love to make it down to Bathurst, either doing the 12-hour or whatever other event. Just do that track, I think would be awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've gotten to race in Europe, gotten to race Japan a little bit. There's certainly all kinds of tracks all over the place I'd love to run. Haven't been fortunate enough to at least drive Nürburgring, but would love to really go back and race there a little bit. And but yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much a sports car guy, but I now that NASCAR started to do a lot more road racing, I really enjoy those road races, and so I'd like to keep doing a few of those every year whenever they fit this schedule. It's kind of like Spec Miata with 800 horsepower, so it's just so much fun. But yeah, I mean, I love pretty much any kind of racing, and You know, you mentioned Baja. I did that twice and would love to go back and do that again. Pikes Peak, I've done it twice and won it in class once. Would love to have the opportunity to win overall. I think that one's a really tough one to schedule with, you know, building a car and planning out that whole thing. A lot of times it falls with a conflict for, you know, one of the race schedules that I'm doing. So it's always hard to fit that kind of stuff in, the little one-off things. But
Yeah.
That would, definitely be going back to Pikes Peak to try to do an overall win would really be high on the list.
How was that? Those, because you've gotten to do it, and you know we've seen it, and I think it was you know, the ones that get a lot of views on YouTube are the ones where things go very poorly, but you know. Yeah,
I mean, first time there, you're for sure drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much information. The event is so unusual because it's a week long, and the only practice you get is during the week before the tourist hours open up. So you go up there at like 2 or 3 a.m. You unload, you drive your whole truck and trailer up every day, unload, run a third of the mountain at dawn as soon as the light comes up, and then you're off the mountain at 8 a.m. and you have all day to kill, try to get some sleep again. And so it's an endurance event, even though it's a 10-minute run on Sunday, you know, so you got a week of all that crap. And then, and obviously the course is just insane. So, you know, starting from 8,000 feet or whatever and going to 14,000. It's pretty much the Nürburgring. It's almost the same length, almost the same number of turns, just not quite as fast. But it's a lot of fun, and certainly, you know, daunting and challenging, but going up there and looking over the edge of the, you know, course, especially on your recon days when you're just going up in a streetcar or something like that, that's when it's the impact of it, you know, really hits you, and you get to see the terrain around and how high up you are. And that's when it's really impressive. When, at least for me, when you're in the car, it's just kind of another racetrack. You kind of know in the back of your mind that, there's not really a guardrail, there's no catch fence, and there are certainly poor consequences, but you have to just kind of treat it like any other piece of asphalt or whatever, any other race course.
Yeah, it can go downhill real quick.
Literally.
Yeah.
So, Mike, do you have a racing philosophy?
No, I don't know that I would specifically say I have a racing philosophy. I guess my style is fairly conservative or calculated. And I'm certainly very self-critical and analyzing. One of my strengths, I think, when I was coming up was that I watched so much of my own video and other people's video, but I would spend a lot of time watching my onboard and, being critical and analyzing what I was doing and kind of teaching myself and reading and whatnot too. But, I'm the type that doesn't really go off track much. I don't spin much, but I work my way up to expanding my limit so that I can be at the limit. Now I've driven so many things, so many tracks, so many times that it's easy for me to get very quickly to pretty much what the limit is, and then kind of pick away at those last tenths or whatever. But I would say in general, I tend to be a more conservative driver compared to some of the other pros that you kind of have to reel back. And some of the other like young, fast guys that I've worked with on a coaching level. But so I guess that would be the general rule that would kind of summarize my style, but I wouldn't necessarily say I have a philosophy.
Would you characterize yourself as more of a video guy or a data guy, or?
I think you have to be strong at both, at a high level. I certainly started more with video just because it was something that was more accessible to me. But even early on, I had a TrackMate, GPS data system similar to the AIM stuff now, and spent a lot of time on that and started coaching people with that kind of stuff pretty early. So, I did get a lot of practice reading data and working with data and trying to extract the most information out of it. And now we have really elaborate systems, so that we can look at all kinds of channels and live data and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I think it's something that you really have to be strong on both sides with. But for me, the visual, the connection, that you get visually from watching the video, I think is something that's pretty strong. And early on, I also did some more sim racing. And so I was able to kind of go back and forth with that and, learn new tracks before I got there and, practice virtual laps and get a sense for that sort of stuff, even though, even if it doesn't perfectly apply, it certainly it moves the learning curve down the road a little bit and helps you on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the types of racing, which one is your favorite?
Favorite type of racing, man, that's pretty tough. Honestly, the TA2 stuff I'm doing right now, even though that seems like a pretty convenient answer, is a lot of fun. And it's, similar to my comment about the NASCAR stuff, it's basically a spec series. There's a little variation in the cars, but they're very close. And, it's kind of low grip, smaller tire, smaller brakes, but plenty of horsepower. And so and no driver aids, no ABS, no TC, manual gearbox. So it's really all on the driver and the team setting up the car and how you work together to get everything out of it. I think some of the newer like customer racing cars that have lots of TC and are really highly engineered. They're fast cars. They're fun to drive, but not always maybe as much on the driver. It seems like on some level it's a little bit more on the team or how your driving style fits what the car has been engineered to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it seems like the TA2 car, you can kind of make it fit your style more, or whatever. The driver has a little bit more freedom to get the most out of it, I think.
And can you explain what a TA2 is?
Yeah, sorry. So the TA2 is a spec Trans Am car that came about like almost 10 years ago now. So it's a tube frame car, muscle pony car bodies on them. So Camaro, Mustang, Dodge Challenger, and a V8 of some flavor. There's a spec Chevy that you can run in any of the bodies, or you can run the manufacturer motor, and they're all BOP, or balanced to be about the same power to weight ratio, and so that's about 500-ish horsepower, and they weigh under 3,000 pounds. So good power to weight ratio, 4-speed gearbox, a dog ring gearbox, so you can it's a lift to shift, but you don't have to use a clutch. Just rev match, similar to a NASCAR drivetrain, solid rear axle, but just very basic, fairly easy to, maintain. The bodywork is pretty cheap if you bang it up, which we usually do. And so it's for a pro level race car, it's very quick. They're a little faster than a GT4, not quite as fast as a GT3. Not super high levels of aerodynamic grip, mostly mechanical grip. So a little bit more relatable to people coming from, production style cars or that sort of thing. And they're just cool, because you can race really close, you can rub fenders, and there's deep fields. Usually we have 30 cars or so. And the top 5 or 10 guys could all win it. So, it's really competitive. You got former IndyCar guys showing up and a couple of NASCAR young guns every weekend, guys like me that have been in sports cars. And so it's just a wide variety, but a large talent pool and very close kind of spec sort of equipment.
So if I were to give you you have control and you can design your own racing series, what would you want out of the series itself? What type of car and what type of tracks and surfaces, etc.?
Well, that one's tough because I have such a varied level of interest. I love sports cars and prototypes, and driving those is a lot of fun. But I mean, really, to me, it would pretty much be Aussie V8 supercars or something like that, or NASCAR, but on road courses or mostly road courses. And I really like that style of high horsepower, low grip, close, tight racing.
Depends on the driver, not the car, more.
Yeah.
Sounds like we share everything except the skill that you have. Okay.
So, well, what did you learn from one type of racing that applies to road courses? And does it help you to cross train?
I don't understand that one. Sorry.
So I guess I wrote it and I was writing it very poorly. You tend to do just about every type of driving, and does any of it correspond to helping you with your track driving, or are they fairly independent disciplines, and does it help you to cross train amongst the different types of racing you've done?
I think the biggest thing is, any seat time you get is going to help with car control or setup knowledge on some level. Obviously, Baja is not a lot that relates to, prototype racing, but I think at least as far as asphalt is concerned, most of the cars in some way relate to each other, and you can learn things setup wise that works here. And, these guys are used to doing, they do it every weekend. And you learn some little piece of that might apply to a different car where maybe it's unusual to use that particular kind of thing. One thing that pops to mind is like a spring rubber. Or a damper bump rubber. Some series are more used to using that kind of thing for setup. And so like in a TA2 or stock car where a spring rubber is really common, it's basically just a rubber that fits in between the coils of the springs and can add some spring rate. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a real common thing in some GT or touring car stuff. And so sometimes you might transfer little stuff like that back and forth. And certainly there's a lot of, just value in being with different teams, different engineers, picking up different stuff like that. And anytime you're in a car, you might feel something that is familiar to a different car. And so you can kind of relate that sort of handling characteristic or balance, or whether it's, how to conserve a car over a longer distance stint, how to save a tire, how to save fuel without losing too much time. There's just all kinds of stuff that you can learn every time you're out doing it, which may or may not apply real directly, but frequently does.
Ooh, I just thought of something. I may have thought of something you haven't done yet, but I'm pretty sure you have. Did you ever do any ice racing?
No, but that has been on the list. I have actually talked to a few people and it just never quite panned out. But yes, I would love to do some of that.
Well, look at a big smile on his face.
It's definitely on our list. We're obsessed with going ice racing. We just, we found it and we want to do it. Now we just got to be able to travel more easily and be able to be in cars with people. So that'll be fun. We'll bring our own snow shovel for that.
So what was one of your biggest aha moments when you were racing? What were some of the big milestones that you hit?
Well, certainly some of the biggest milestones as far as my career, I had early on when I was doing Speccy 30, I did Speed Channel at the time had a TV show that they did. And so I applied for that and got into that. And that helped me get some notoriety or exposure to people, and did really well in the show. Didn't end up winning the prize because we got wrecked out, but just being out there and being exposed to a lot of people ended up down the road helping me meet a team owner that put me in a car. And then that led me to another team owner seeing me and putting me in another series higher than that. And so that's kind of how I got to World Challenge, was a team owner seeing me through that chain of events. And I was able to replace Ron Fellows when he went and did a NASCAR race one weekend. Very last minute, they called me up to come race his World Challenge car. And so that was kind of a really big jumping point for me, because we won that race also that weekend. So coming in, filling big shoes like that from Ron Fellows, and then winning a World Challenge race on debut, that was a pretty big step and got me a full-time ride in World Challenge, which lasted several years. And also, helped me get a few other rides in IMSA and that sort of thing. But I would say that was one of, those two things together are kind of the biggest thing that pushed me from club racer, driver, coach kind of guy, which, there's a zillion of those out there that never break through, to, someone that is recognized enough that they can make a career out of it. And, you know, it's tough to do. And even once you kind of get a little bit of help or find the right, you know, chain of events, you still have to be pretty proactive to keep maintaining that. And,
it's all about the hustle, isn't it?
Sorry.
It's all about the hustle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really all about knowing the right people, the right time, and, you know, and you can't wait around to know the right people. You have to go find the right people. So
right.
It's being at the racetrack a lot and staying in touch with people, going to races when you don't have a ride, and just talking to people, and lots of that. And, you know, that's, again, part of the stuff that's not really glamorous, but it's part of the process. And, you know, I've been to countless Daytonas when I didn't have a ride, and it was really frustrating watching everybody else driving out there, and I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs on the sidelines, but walking through the garages, talking to team owners, talking to drivers, all that. So, you know, it's frustrating, but it's part of the deal.
Right. So now we discussed with our audiences, like, on lower level HPDEs, but when you start getting up into the upper level coaching, and you're coaching drivers that are really good, what are some of the things that you see in theirs that you're trying to work on or correct for them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, or I guess most people, struggle with a lot of the same things. And certainly one of them is courage and high speed stuff. And that only gets worse as the car gets faster and more capable. So, you know, as aerodynamics play a more significant role, it's a lot harder to convince yourself of what the car can do and commit to do that, you know. And so braking really deep to take advantage of the aero, or going through really fast corners, taking advantage of that. But even on non-aerodynamic, or, you know, fairly low level downforce cars, you get that same kind of thing. It's just not quite at the same speed. And even the folks that are more confident in themselves and can convince themselves to do that, the hardest, I guess, skill to develop, I find, is the brake release and entry portion of a corner. You know, most people get comfortable with feeling the lateral grip of the car through the mid corner. So, you know, as you're doing your DE progression, you know, slow entry, fast out, and you get used to how you feel the car slide or understeer or whatever mid corner, and how you add throttle, and the car can stay at that kind of transition towards, you know, adding power and getting forward bite without wheel spin. The hardest part, well, and even before that, so then also there's, you know, you can get used to how hard you can brake, and, you know, the threshold of braking, and how hard brake pressure you can use, and slow down the car really quick. But it's that last little bit from when you're trailing off the last, say, 20% of brake pressure to when you reach your minimum speed in the corner, that is where a lot of the speed is. And so it's not only because of how high the entry speed is, but because that is when you're balancing the car to induce the rotation. And so the earlier in the corner that you can find that rotation, the quicker you get all four tires working for you laterally. You know, you've gotten them all slowing you down. And then once you try to get it into the corner, you're trying to transition the tire to some amount of yaw angle, whatever is good for that tire, call it 5 degrees. And so as you're trying to transition to that yaw angle, you want all four tires to work as quickly as possible in that direction. But if you just come off the brake and you don't have the weight on the front, then probably understeers. And so then you only have the slip angle in the front, and the rears are just kind of tailing along for the ride. And it's that balancing act, using the pedals to turn the car as much or more than the steering wheel. And it's that feel bit that is kind of the last little progression in the whole chain of events to get really quick.
Wow.
So ladies, at the skid pad, you just have to do all of that and you'll be fine.
So we'll just have to replay this over and over and over.
That's right. You know, and like I said, it does sound like a lot of the same learning that we have to do, is just with faster, more powerful cars.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, you know, there are plenty of people that are super quick at DEs or super experienced and, you know, just don't race or don't want to compete or whatever, or, you know, plenty of people that want to do, you know, basic endurance racing and not pro sprint races or whatever the deal. Everybody's got their different thing. But there's drivers of all sorts of levels at all of these different events, and with different strengths and weaknesses somewhere on that spectrum.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just in general, what kind of learning do you teach? I mean, what levels do you, I know you don't do HPDE 1s or 2s. I'm sure you're like probably people that have like, just kind of like competitive racers, right?
Not everybody. No, I do a lot of DE guys. Actually, I would say there's a fair number of DE folks that kind of, they do their 1 and 2, they have an instructor, they get to, call it intermediate or whatever. And they do that intermediate track day for a year or 2 or whatever, and they feel like they plateau, and then they don't know how to go faster other than just bolt stuff on their car. Right. And so they want to, they want to go faster, or they want to go safer, or whatever it is. They need to beat their buddy, or they just want to do something different. And so there's
sounds like you're in my marriage.
There's plenty of people actually that I do Ds with.
I'm right here
with all sorts of cars.
Yeah.
She doesn't think I can hear her. It's because she ignores me. I see what's going on here. Okay. So a few times I've heard it said, the one that I'm placing a name to right now, but I've heard it said by a few people. Russ Bentley was who I was thinking about. Is the difference isn't necessarily the technique, but the mastering the fundamentals that separates drivers as they continue to progress, and it's more or less being better at doing the same or very similar things. Is that what you've found as you've progressed and taught?
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. Definitely fundamentals. You don't get around not learning those or not perfecting those. But I think it's also being able to adapt. So even, people that think that they have reached the max or whatever, okay, what about when the tire is over pressure or it gets hotter or, whatever, things change all the time. The variables change that we're working with. So you can't just reproduce the same thing every time. Even, I see this a lot with club members at a particular racetrack. Doesn't matter what the racetrack is, but if they only go to that track or mostly go to that racetrack, they're really good, but they're only going to be 95% or whatever at that track. And they can't go beyond that because they can't adapt to whether it's really hot or really cold, or their tires are really old, or whatever, doesn't matter. Or if they try a different car, and so it's a matter of being adaptable and being able to sense all these variables, as best you can, at least, and change your inputs to kind of match whatever else is happening. And I'll, I have to remind myself of that a little bit every now and again, because there's a lot of tracks I've been to a lot and driven the same car there a lot. And it can be just a matter of, we've changed something on the setup, and there might be some other way to maximize what we're trying to do, or, so it's always thinking about what else can you do? Don't get habitual in your driving. And, obviously that really comes into play when it rains or something like that. Then it becomes really variable. But even when, it's pretty dry and clear and you're driving the car you've always driven on the track you've always driven, something's different. And so you have to figure out what that is and how to maximize it.
I see. Maybe I'll get there someday. We'll try.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Vicki, your favorite.
All right. So we're going to do our Fast and Furious Storytime questions. They're a little bit quick, and we're just going to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
For our audience. And I think you're going to enjoy this. It's going to take you back a little bit. Jennifer, you want to start?
TBD.
Yeah.
So our first Fast and Furious question is, what was your first car and what was the worst car you've ever had?
First car was the 535. And so that one's easy. And that's also, I think, the first car I had on track. I did a D in that when I was 17.
Nice.
The worst car that I've had personally, but man, I don't know. Had some pretty junk old BMWs. The worst car I've driven on track was an Infinity G35 sedan that some guy had modified. And this is, I don't want to call him out too much, but short story, I was doing a data lap for him, and it was street tires, open diff, superchargers, stock brakes, and just not good.
Its BOP was not high.
Very not.
No.
So what is the one thing that no one knows about you that would surprise them? Like you play in a band, you have a guitar or something like
He's
that.
got no time. He's winning races.
He's got no time. He's got a cat in the barn.
Yeah, most people probably don't know about the cat unless they've seen it on Instagram. But I maybe that I went to Georgia Tech for a year. I didn't keep going with it because I was trying to race every weekend, and that didn't work out so well. But yeah, post high school, I went to Georgia Tech and did mechanical engineering, early classes until I decided maybe I'll try to give this racing thing a go and go back to school later if I can't do it.
They have a good Formula SAE program there. If you ever want to try this racing thing,
that's half of why I went there. Actually, at the time too, one of the alumni guys was running a Daytona prototype team, or on some level, and so I thought, well, maybe there's some way in there to sweep floors for the race team or something.
Yeah, I think you may have found a second way to get in, so you seem to be okay. So if you ever we stole this from Spike Ferenston's podcast, but it's this concept of a taproot car. It's the car that got you into cars. It could be a Hot Wheels car. It could be your neighbor's car when you were growing up. It could be one of your parents' car. Usually not, but could be. Do you have like a taproot car that made you get into cars?
I'd probably have to give credit to my dad again on that one. He had a few interesting cars growing up, but I guess one of them that is the coolest that I really got a kick out of was he had this Euro market 635 that had been built up with a hot motor from a race team over there. And I used to ride around that, and it had all the German labels on the dash and everything, and it had the pearl white with the motorsport stripes over the top of it, and it was a really slick looking car. So yeah, that was fun. We also got hit by a deer driving that down the road. Literally, the deer hit us on the passenger side while I was sitting over there. Fortunately, that car survived though.
It's a pretty car.
So was that the family car, or do you have like a family car that sticks out in your mind?
We had a handful of old Mercedes, like diesel 240D and gas wagon, and I don't know, yeah, some other family car kind of stuff. And my mom had a Suburban for a little while, and kind of mostly boring stuff. My dad also had a Triumph TR6 for a little while that I'd ride around in. It was a pile of crap when he bought it, and a bigger pile of crap later. So, but yeah, just fun stuff. Anything, motorsports, or not even motorsports, but just kind of, mechanical was always of interest. I remember my parents have pictures of me with a Power Wheels Jeep when I was 3 or whatever, up on jack stands in the driveway. And so, yeah, it's always been in the blood.
Nice.
So, let me see, stick, paddles, automatic, or it doesn't matter?
Depends on the purpose. I have a stick in the 535 with the LS. Paddles are typically faster on a racetrack. But, the TA2 car, I really enjoy having, if everybody's got the same thing, I'd say stick, because that just adds another element that you have to do right. And, I think I worked obviously pretty hard on it early on. I don't think kids now necessarily have to do it much at all. Most of the guys coming up, trying to make their way into the pro ranks are only running paddle shift stuff ever now. So a lot of the young guys don't really have that finesse that you need on the gearbox. But yeah, I would say each pattern if I'm choosing for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We're with you.
Mike, do you have a favorite race car driver?
Maybe growing up.
There's several that growing up, I remember, really being a big fan of Michael Schumacher and watching F1, and of course being a BMW guy, I was a big fan of Bill Oberlin and Boris Said, and a lot of guys that I've been fortunate enough to race against now or with, which has been really cool also. But man, the list is long. I wouldn't say necessarily that I'm a fan of everybody, but certainly a lot of respect for a lot of guys out there, and interest in watching their video and learning as much as I can. And it's been, I'm a fan of the sport, so it's been pretty cool being able to race against some of the big names. Even now, like, this year in the 24, I got to go wheel to wheel with Lawrence Vanthoor and Earl Bamber and Bill and, all kinds of guys like that. So it's pretty fun being able to do that.
So what is that one car that got away that you wish you still had?
Man, these are tough because a lot of the ones that are, race cars that I've driven weren't ones that I own, but ones that maybe I still miss driving, or,
Which one do you want back?
Which one do you want to still be sitting behind the wheel with?
So the Corvette that I started in World Challenge with was pretty special, and we won a bunch of races with it, and it sounded amazing. It had fairly high revving, but it had this exhaust on it that just made it scream. And I still get people that come up to me and say, "Oh, I watched your videos of that car. I love the way it sounded." But, and it was a cool car.
They look crazy on the racetrack. Like just the length of the front end from, the back wheels is just, are they complicated to drive on the track?
No, they're pretty good. So this was a C6 body car, and they're, at World Challenge level, they've got carbon bodywork and stuff, but and the engines are set back a little bit. But even if you're talking about kind of stock cars, track day cars, they're really, really capable. Just, the center of gravity is really low, great engines, big tires. So, it's a pretty potent combination.
Mm-hmm.
Tires, big brakes. Yeah. So, we're assuming that there's an answer to this. You may have reached your limit and there's nothing there, but do you have any areas of your driving or racing that you're working on for the upcoming season?
I wouldn't say anything in particular, although I've, been able to get in some prototype cars more recently, coaching P3 cars and stuff. And those are just a little bit different in how you drive them, and certainly, how they feel and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So learning those cars and learning how to maximize them has been a good challenge and a fun challenge for me. I get fairly limited seat time, compared to some of the drivers in the series. And so trying to get myself up to that pace immediately has been a good challenge, and has been pretty rewarding to do. And hopefully I'll be able to race a few of these cars later on in the year as well. But yeah, I would say trying to maximize that type of high downforce, kind of lower power to weight, or still high power, if you will, but lower center of gravity, higher downforce cars are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, what is the fastest you have ever driven in a car? What car and where? Fastest
top speed, I think, is about 200, 201, somewhere in there.
God.
At Daytona on the road course in a TA car, Trans Am. So that's basically a 850 horsepower NASCAR motor, and something similar to what I'm driving now, the TA car. Just a little bit different spec, but yeah, those, the NASCAR guys obviously do that a bunch around Daytona, but not when they're breaking down into turn one of the road course. So it's pretty fun doing 200 and then coming down to a 40-mile-an-hour corner or whatever it is. It's quite an interesting entry to the road course there.
Probably some pretty good pictures with the brakes on flaming red.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sure. Okay, so we have magical abilities, as you'll find out with several of these questions coming up. So we're going to win the lottery. The key is that when we do this, we're going to get a desert island and we're going to build a racetrack on it. So for each of our guests who've been nice enough to put up with us and come on our podcast, we want to be good hosts, and we're going to give you and make sure that they're prepped and ready. You get 5 cars that you can have. Now we have a road course and a dirt course. So you have 5 cars that you're going to be waiting for you at this island. What cars would you want?
I'd have to say an LMP1 car.
Okay.
Pick your, probably the Porsche. Dirt sprint car, wing sprint car.
Okay.
A trophy truck.
Trophy
that
truck.
counts as a car.
Sure, absolutely. We race a truck half the time we're racing, so we understand.
Then I'd have to go with something. Let's say a McLaren, the old F1 GTR
F1?
LM.
Struggle through with one of those. I'm pretty sure you could make it through the day.
What else do I need? I guess a good old fashioned stock car, cup car.
Okay, all right. So Jen, nobody's picked yours yet.
Oh no.
Jen wanted a taco truck as one of her cars.
You know what? Like a taco truck, you can do anything with the taco truck.
That's right.
I do love tacos.
So what would your of all your racing, and if you had an opportunity to pick any build, what would you build from?
A lot of his stuff is tube framed, so
yeah,
you kind of dress it as you want. So I'm not sure.
I mean, the Trans Am cars are, but it all depends on what you're trying to build for. I think there's a different weapon for every goal, I guess. If I'm trying to go endurance racing or something like that, it's probably going to be, well, I don't like any of the new BMWs, but an older BMW. It's, just because I'm a BMW guy. The Porsches too, I like a lot. An older air-cooled 911 would be a lot of fun.
So you're not a fan of the beaver teeth?
Not so much. No.
I haven't seen.
Waiting to see them in person, but yeah.
I saw 2 in person, and it didn't get better.
Yeah,
they're pretty bad.
I'm just waiting to see how some of those aftermarket body kits actually turn out. As soon as they posted pictures of those, people were already talking about putting a different bumper on them. So maybe somebody can make them look decent.
Yep. If you're driving, you don't get to see the outside, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, but everybody else does. Gets to that look.
Well, you just have to pass them faster so they don't see the front very long.
Yeah.
So, what is your most memorable car breakdown on the road or the track?
Man, there's just so many good ones flooding through my head.
Well, we'll take them all. Our favorites are good, bad, and the ugly, and we don't really care what your good and the bad answer are. We just care about the ugly.
One that sounds ugly, but actually turned out pretty okay was literally driving the wheels off a car, which I've done twice that I can think of. So one time driving a buddy's E30 BMW at Carolina Motorsports Park, had I won't name the brand of wheel, but a 5-spoke wheel, and turned into turn 4, which is a pretty fast entry kink, and the right rear just blew off the car. And so the center, of the hub of the wheel was still bolted on. The rest of the wheel and tire went flying. And so we did a little 360 into the grass. Unfortunately, didn't really bang too much up. But yeah, it wasn't pretty. And then another time I was running a chump race at VIR, and I think it was a Saab. I don't remember. And the left front broke all the studs off and sent the wheel flying out of oak tree, back when there was an oak tree. And,
wow. Were they over Titan?
I don't know. I think it was a team that I wasn't with all weekend. It was like I was driving for somebody else, and they were like, "Hey, come do a stint in our car." Okay, yep, great.
That's what that's always how it goes. You get a good guy in the car, and then the car just can't handle them.
I suspect they had been pretty well seasoned wheel studs, but
yeah, that happens. Yeah.
So if you could drive a car and race a car for the rest of your life from one decade, what would it be? What's your favorite decade of cars
and race cars?
Yeah, probably would be 70s or 80s. Although my life may not be quite as long if I drove it as every weekend. So the team I was talking about earlier, Junior 3, they're big BMW fans as well, and they just restored an M1 Pro car, which I got to do a shakedown with end of last year. So 79, 400 or whatever horsepower, 3.5 liter, normally aspirated, just awesome car, screaming loud, awesome sound, and that's pretty hard to pass, I would say. That just the cool factor of it. It looks awesome. It's all mechanical, no driver aids, like we were talking about. It's all up to the driver to get the speed out of it. So really like that kind of stuff. And even into the 80s with the DTM cars and stuff, and 90s, I guess, I think when they did the E46 M3 GTR, that was a pretty badass thing. It would have been pretty cool to get the opportunity in that kind of thing.
Okay, this is the tough question that the ladies won't ask, so I get to. Jeremy, Hammond, May, Chris, Matt, other?
Well, it's pretty hard to say anybody's better than the original trio, but I would say I'm a big fan of Chris Harris. I think he does hit the nail on the head a lot, and he's a good driver himself. I think he's certainly the best driver out of those.
Oh, for sure.
Has done a fair amount of pro racing himself and doing GT3 stuff. But for TV fun factor, it's, Clarkson's pretty hard to beat. Just the whole dynamic those three have together.
They have a great dynamic.
You do. Did you ever get to race with Chris Harris yet?
It's a good question. I think so. I did do some Blancpain endurance races in 2018, I think it was, over in Europe, and did a handful of them. And I believe he would have been in a couple of those, at least Silverstone. But I mean, there's 50 cars with 4 drivers or whatever. Yeah. It's hard to keep track of if he was actually in that race, but not like a whole lot of wheel to wheel directly with him.
Well, it'd be fun. He seems like a great guy. So we're relatively new, and we're aimed at trying to get people into our sport. So one of the things that we'd like to ask is, are there any great stories that come to mind from one of your first few times racing or on track?
Yeah, so one of the times, obviously I started in kart racing pretty early and had a fair amount of seat time before I even got to driving cars on track. But I did a couple years just doing Ds and doing all that normal stuff, HPD route, starting from the very bottom and going up to instructing, and then did a little bit of BMW club racing. And I remember doing practice starts in my dad's 2002 BMW wide body thing. And even having done a few karting race starts, thinking, wow, this is totally different when you start doing it in the car, and just some people are really aggressive driving through the grass and stuff. And then, me just trying to not bang up my dad's car and that kind of thing. And so there's all kinds of different levels. And then I remember years past that instructing at a club race school and doing the practice starts and being the guy driving through the grass, driving 3 wide through the middle, and, passing all these poor harmless souls trying to not bang up their new car. And, so there's obviously the big spectrum we talked about earlier, but anybody can be anywhere on that spectrum at different parts in their career, if you will. So, it's not giving up or getting intimidated early, and just sticking with it and learning and, figuring out where you're going to end up.
Yep. For sure.
If you could have an ultimate road trip to and from, and in what car?
So I've actually sort of done this and planned a few with a buddy of mine. We did a trip. We built this E46 rally car, and he lives in Florida. We drove it basically all the way across the country on the southern end, stopped in Texas and Austin. My buddy's got the Rally Ready Ranch near Austin, Texas, near Coda. Did a day or two just playing around, sliding in the dirt, and then drove it all the way to Mexico and watched some of the Baja 1000 and did a bunch of off-roading in the Southwest and drove it back. And that was a ton of fun, just because it's different. It's not the same old driving down the highway or driving curvy roads. just get to go explore and see stuff off the beaten path that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise see. So that was a ton of fun. And we've talked about a few other similar kind of things. And I don't know if you're familiar with Long Way Round or Long Way Up, Long Way Down. They're 3 different documentaries with motorcycle based, obviously, but big long trips, cross continent kind of stuff. And so doing something like that, I think would be pretty high on the bucket list for me. Eventually I would do it in a car, but doing something like that would be a lot of fun if I could ever find enough consecutive time off to actually do any of that. But just exploring and seeing stuff, I think, is the coolest part to me. Like, you know, every now and again I'll go to the mountains or something and drive, but I don't push on a mountain road. Like, you know, even going with buddies that have no track experience or very little track experience, they're trying to drive harder than I am. I'm like, guys, just chill, you know, like, you know, this is not the place for it or whatever, you know, like I enjoy it, but I don't get the same, you know,
right,
juice out of it, I guess, if you will, as driving on the racetrack. And so, you know, while I still enjoy taking the curves fast and having fun, whatever, I'm not pushing. And so for me, the long trips would be more about, you know, just seeing stuff and getting out there and having fun.
Yeah, it's one thing we've noticed is it's even worked on our 18-year-old son. When he first started, he was 17 actually, but he's 20 now. But it tends to take some of the aggression off the road, because you know you can go play on the track, and that's where it should be, and it's a lot safer, and people are paying a little bit more attention. Yeah,
I will admit though that the traffic gets me more upset on the street than even on the racetrack, because, you know, it's just people that are oblivious and don't care about driving. They're just going, you know, point A to point B, looking at their phone. But
yeah, we play a game with our children that's like, you have to call as early as possible who does not know that we're even here when they're driving. So it's not a big game.
I just assume nobody sees me and I'm going to pass them before they have a chance to hit me.
So in some cars, there's an invisible button. And if you open the glove compartment on the left-hand side, there's this little button. If you push it, then magically your car appears to the rest of the world, or so it seems. Jen, your favorite question.
This is my favorite question. So what is your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time?
Man. So obviously Ford versus Ferrari was really good. Rush was really good. For me as a kid growing up, I would say Gone in 60 Seconds was one I really enjoyed, even though it's not motorsport, it's just lots of cool cars. And, you know, and obviously Eleanor was a big thing for a whole generation of people. It's pretty cool. I would probably say that, you know, watched all the Fast and Furious and kind of enjoyed that just because it was not, you know, some other stupid movie. I'd rather watch Cars than a movie, but none of those really hit for me young, you know, as much as Gone in 60 Seconds did.
I don't think Vicky's ever seen it. We might have to get you that one.
I don't know if I did or not.
I think you did. I'm not sure you paid attention.
So, of everybody that you're racing against, which car would you like to jump into that you're familiar with? You kind of say, "Hey, can I take that for a ride?"
Ever?
Or they probably just let you.
A lot of these are sponsored. They're not quite so. You just take it for a rip, you know.
That's Saab.
As long as you have a couple $1 million.
You asked for that Saab, didn't you?
Yeah, man. I mean, just about anytime I show up at the racetrack, you know, no matter what the event, there's something that I want to drive, whether it's a DE and some guy's got a GT2 or, you know, or even just something old and cool, or, you know, if it's pro racing, obviously I'd like to try whatever car looks quicker. You know, when you're out there and you're like, man, you know, we're half a second off of that guy. I wonder if it's the car, if it's me. It'd be nice to be able to get in and try, but that one changes every week, you know. So
there's got to be one though. You could sit there and you get the claw and you pull the guy's helmet right out of the car and you plop yourself back in. The one that you're like, oh, I wanted a shot at that car. No shot against your your team? You just wanted to try that car?
Well, I would say just a DPI in general, because I haven't driven a prototype at that level. So just pretty much any of those would be fun. Although pretty early on, because I'm tall, I kind of gave up on the GT or the prototype and open wheel kind of route. That's actually the direction I wanted to go early on. And what led me to do GT and touring car stuff was just there was space to fit in them. So having the opportunity to drive like an F1 car or a DPI car or something that, you know, I never figured I would actually be able to get in and do, that would be the choice.
Maybe on the island we can get one of those shrink rays, a short-term shrink ray.
Yeah, there we go.
And you could be like the perfect 5'8" driver, and you could go in anything you want. Seems to be. Anyway, so the girls hate this question, but I don't care. What is your favorite thing to order or a restaurant that's at or near a track? See, Vicki loves this question. See how much she loves it?
That was a dumb question.
Well, almost any racetrack, there's got to be a Mexican joint around. It seems like almost any race weekend or DE weekend or whatever, we end up at a Mexican restaurant at least one night. And I'm a big fan of Mexican food, so I'm happy to do that. Yeah, and anything there, pretty much, they're all the same, different forms, right? So
okay. Well, if you since you did a champ car race, if we're ever at the same race, we will make sure to bring some Mexican food for you.
Perfect.
So, so far, what is the favorite racetrack you've been on?
Well, I'd have to say the Nürburgring, but that's kind of cheating.
What is it?
The Nürburgring in Germany.
I've never heard that one.
It's a big, huge track in Germany. Just, YouTube it. There's a zillion onboards, and it's actually a public toll road too. So when there's not a race going on, you can pay your 25, 30 euro or whatever and just go drive it. And so it's just amazing. I mean,
what makes it so nice?
There's just incredible. It's very old school. It's built in World War I or II, I forget. And it's around the Eiffel Mountains in Germany. It's 10 or 12 miles long or something like that. It's like you're just driving down a country road, basically. Mm-hmm. Huge elevation changes, camber changes. It's just so complex and not like any other track around, basically. So I definitely go watch some videos of that. It's awesome. And I've had a chance to drive it a couple of times, but not race on it, and doing, just the tourist laps. So that's a ton of fun. Would love to go back and race there. My favorite stateside, I would say, is VIR, which is convenient because I grew up nearby and still live pretty close. But it's the same kind of thing where it's just an older style track with, it's not computer designed. It's not got a ton of paved runoff that makes it way too easy like Coda. Mm-hmm. It's a challenging track, a driver's track, and something that I just really enjoy.
Oh, good.
So Vicki, I think you're not placing the name. Remember when Sabine was racing the van against Jeremy?
Yes, I do remember.
Yeah, you just weren't placing the name. I know you know where it is. Mm-hmm. All right, the harder question for you, Mike. Do you have a favorite turn? Either one that drives you crazy or one that you're really good at. Could be either way. Could be both. You never know.
Man, I mean, there's so many good ones out there. The Eau Rouge at Spa is really good, but only if you're in something really fast. First time I went there, I was in a little Golf, and you could just do it blindfolded in your sleep, basically, because it's so slow. But
it's not even a turn, right?
Yeah. But that one's really good and something quick. And the uphill S is a VIR. It's hard to beat, and something where it's like really just on the edge. I don't know. There's so many good ones. The Kink at Road America. There's lots of good ones at Sonoma. Sonoma doesn't get as much notoriety, I would say, but there's a lot of really good fun corners there. Good elevation change. I would say pretty much anywhere that has good elevation change in a corner, that's a good corner.
Okay. Like the elevations, because some people like the fast ones, some people like the sweepers, some like the S's, things like that. Yeah. So he's an elevation change. Did you do pit race yet?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, great track.
It's fun. I like it.
Yeah.
Miss Jen.
So, in your opinion, how much of racing or driving is learned versus how much is natural skill?
We want to know if we have a chance at this thing, you know?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of it is learned. I've seen a lot of people really develop, a long way. It takes a lot of time, obviously a lot of money. But I think it is certainly, I would say probably 60 or 70% learned at least. I think maybe more. I don't know. It really to me is the part of it that would be genetic or inherent is more your learning ability or style or motivation. So you may not inherently have driving skill, but if you inherently have a good work ethic and a good
social skills.
Well, yeah, social skills. But,
I always was thinking that part of it is just your own courage and grit.
I think that's a large part of it. But I think also some of that can be learned, to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I think just, getting more and more seat time in a car gives you more confidence. And so, there's people like I've been coaching a guy just purely by video in Texas. I've never met him before. And he was very novice and just started sending me videos, and I'd look at him and coach him and send him some notes to do. And, I don't know all of his history, but he's made huge progress in the last 6 months just because somebody's telling him something to do. And, so I think you can learn a whole lot and really progress. And it's really, if you want to, and if you're really putting in the effort and time and doing all that.
That's awesome.
So as far as your driving and racing, what is something you are relatively good at? What needs a bit of work and focus? And what is the biggest area for you to improve?
Everybody hates the good at question,
I think a lot of people would say that I'm really good in traffic. So I think that even from my early karting days, I raced in a kart series that had a lot of different types of karts. And so managing different speeds of karts, and then NASA and World Challenge and stuff, I was always racing kind of multi-class stuff. And so learning how to manage traffic and when to pass people and not, and all of that, I think has been a good skill of mine. And, even doing endurance races now, you never know who's behind the wheel, but you can learn a lot just by kind of reading the body language, if you will, of the car and how, the driver's using it. And you can kind of get an idea of just, whether they see you or not, or whether, even if they don't see you, whether you can slip by in time or not. And so I think that's been a strength of mine. And then, like we sort of talked about earlier, the prototype stuff is a little bit of a new thing to me. It's not completely, out of my realm of knowledge, but it's an area that I'm working on, getting more seat time in them, and learning how to really utilize and both driving and setting up for the aerodynamics of the car is something that I've been working on.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So, what are you currently working on for the upcoming race season?
The biggest, so my race season, my full-time thing in the TA2 car is a type of car that, although I'm used to driving them, there's more freedom and setup and stuff. So unlike the GT3 cars or GT4 cars that are kind of restricted to certain types of setup, they only have a few different options and springs and whatnot that you can do. You can pretty much do whatever you want with a TA2 car within reason. And so there's all kinds of adjustability that maybe you don't get elsewhere, and finding kind of the right package of all that and how everything fits together the best, both for speed and for longevity throughout the race, so that the tire is the best all the way through, and the car stays as consistent as possible. Even though we won the championship last year in that series and won a bunch of races, there's always more competition, and everybody else is improving their game too, so we have to keep doing that as well. And so last year was my first full year in that car, and even though we won and, like I said, had a great year, a lot of it was unknown to me as far as how all that setup stuff would play together. And now that we're going back to a lot of these same races and doing the same tracks again, we have a little bit of background knowledge, but we want to work on it and move it all down the road a little bit, progress it.
So, Mike, you made it through. Many people cross this off their non-bucket list. Congratulations.
Run the gauntlet.
Thank you for coming on. Is there any way that people can contact you or follow you along, or maybe some upcoming races to look for you at?
Yep. So we're going to Road Atlanta this coming weekend with the TA2 car. Certainly can follow along there. My Instagram, YouTube, everything is Mike Skeen Racing, at Mike Skeen Racing. My website, mikeskeen.com. Also has links to all that, but a ton of people watch my YouTube channel. I generally try to post up onboard videos from anything that I'm driving or racing, so there's a ton of content from that. But yeah, come see us if you're near Atlanta this weekend, or check out the schedule for Trans Am throughout the year and come see us at a venue.
Well, thank you again for putting up with us and putting up with our Fast and Furious questions. We think they're fun. Hope you had a good time, and thanks again. And hopefully we'll see you at a race coming up, but you'll have to come down to us. I don't think we're going to catch up to you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Dominating with Dawson.
Welcome to the first story time with Dominating with Dawson. Dun,
Story
dun,
time.
dun. Story time.
Wow.
I've got 2 new questions for our Fast and Furious Storytime questions, and I thought it would be entertaining to ask them of one Ben Dawson.
All right. That sounds fun.
And maybe Vicki. And maybe Jen. So,
Thanks.
Mr. Dawson, you were in the first spot. What is the most memorable car breakdown story you have on track?
I've had a few, but I think probably the most memorable one was I was trying to start the Champ Car 24-hour race at VIR a couple of years ago. And I'd gone through all this stuff to join a team that I thought was going to be pretty fast and be pretty competitive. And it turned out that they weren't. And the first real indicator of that was when I was going to have to start the 24, the car died at Oak Tree. Just died. No, nothing electric happening, nothing at all. Couldn't get it started, had to get towed in. So delayed the start of the race. So that was a pretty bad failure on track that I can think of.
It's not exactly the auspicious start to the day.
No, it got worse from there. We went off. I think we ended up having to get towed in 2 more times, and I think the third time they're like, "Hey, this is our biggest race of the year, so you guys need to get it together. Or you're going home." And this is all within like the first 20 minutes of trying to start the 24. So it wasn't looking great. So that's the one that springs to mind for me. It was pretty bad.
Okay, all right. Well, since Jennifer and Vicki always race with us, the story's probably going to be the same. What is your most memorable car breakdown on track? Anyone? Vicki's on mute. Jennifer's got the puzzled face.
I'm thinking.
Thinking?
I am.
Could be a breakdown, could be a mechanical issue, could be a driver issue, could be a...
Repeat the question.
What is the most memorable breakdown of the car on the track?
Well, I think aside
Oh, do you think, is it when it flash flamed it
Oh, wow, that's fun.
over at
Might need more.
Charlotte?
Well, I mean,
For me, mine is going off track and busting my
Miata.
my Miata. But the other one was all the problems we were having in Charlotte because we didn't know what we didn't know. We're fixing it now.
So let's pretend that there are other people here who don't exactly know the entire story.
So okay,
Yeah, say more
so
about that.
Just because I'm there, I'm not the only person listening.
I mean, honestly, there's so many. There's so many. There's I don't know.
What's some detail on one or two?
When our guests from the West Coast hit a cone and dislodged the oil line, and then there was a flash fire in the.
So that's the fire you referenced earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man,
So there was that.
Somebody yanked an oil line off and just got it on the header or something. And got fire immediately.
So there was like a flash fire, and it was like, oh,
that's exciting.
That was our second one of the weekend.
Or driving on Charlotte and watching the thing leak so horribly. And they had to clean up for us twice. And then
that's
of course
bad racecraft.
There's myself going off on Thunderbolt NJMP and breaking my shock, which was, I would say that was for me. I'm sure Jennifer's got more exciting ones.
Miss Jen, anything memorable, Jen?
I do remember slamming on the brakes and flat tiring all 4 tires.
Yeah, flat spotting.
Yeah, I did that.
That's one way to break down the car.
Yeah.
Why is the car running so bumpy?
Are you wearing a Guns N' Roses shirt?
Yeah, baby.
That's all I was listening to them today. That's great.
That was part of our New Hampshire. We went as guitar heroes in training.
Oh, cool.
So I dressed as
I'm into that. I love it.
Miss Jen, do you have anything most memorable?
Well, aside from the BMW or the Spider Stinger,
pretend people don't know the stories, Jen.
Oh, they know the story.
August probably was the most memorable for me.
Which one?
When I crashed at Charlotte.
Charlotte, yeah, when the car came around.
But if I had to, one that stood out to me, but and I don't think it was anything. But do you remember where were we? Where the brakes kept overheating on the truck?
Pittsburgh.
Where was that?
Pittsburgh. Pit race.
Pittsburgh.
Or the tire falling off on the way down.
Why that stands out to me, but it was a real issue all weekend.
It stood out to me because Vicki kept standing right in the door with the fire extinguisher pointed at the wheel, while her husband was not able to get out because she's standing at the door. But anyway, not that I'm bitter.
Somebody's looking for some tub time tonight.
I'm going for tub time. So here's the most memorable one for me. We're out in Laguna Seca. We're going round and round. Vicky's out there. She's finally starting to put some good times down. She's pulling it. We're talking to her. Mental and I are there with her. We're like, you're doing great. You're doing great. You're doing great. And, just push it a little bit through the straightaway. She pushes it through the straightaway. And she hits the wall in turn 2 as she passes.
Oh, yeah, I did that.
You were pushing it a little further on the straightaway, but you still went to hit the brakes at the same place where you hadn't been pushing as hard, right?
Yeah.
That'll happen.
Well, I think it was because I got caught 3 wide.
So you're already out there. You're a little farther out.
I was in the middle.
Track.
3 wide. And then, everybody was fighting for their spot. And so I lost the line, and that's
Bill, I feel like you buried the lead there.
Yeah.
Like, then we were just pushing her to go faster down the straightaway. Then she went faster, and then she hit the wall. Like,
no, there was going to be more detail, but
okay. I was just saying, there's a lot more going on than just that.
No, the look on. Well, we didn't know she was 3 wide because we were just in the pit talking to her. But the look on Mental and I's face when we didn't see the car go by, we're like, "What did we do? Where'd she go?" She just like evaporated, but it was fun. All right, so another of our new storytime questions. What is do you have any great story from the first time you were on track or in an HPDE or an autocross? Or give us that early, you're just coming out of the egg, you're hitting the track or the autocross for the first time, or the go-kart track for you.
Yeah. Got
any good story from way back when young Ben was slow like us?
Yeah, I think back to when I was a little kid. I think I was in like 3rd grade. My dad had somebody he worked with, or somebody he drilled with at the Navy Reserve or something like that, who was racing cars with their kids. So my brother and I got a chance to go to some dirt track car race and get in. Like, we got to like put on the suit and the helmet and go drive a race.
Wow.
And that's what got me, like, when I got to actually sit down and do it as a kid, because we had yard cart and stuff like that. We would ride go karts all around. And Like I was so much of an ardent kid on the motorized vehicle that like I think I knocked one of the wheels off the cart one time, but I didn't want to quit riding. So my dad and I just knocked that wheel completely off, and I just sort of leaned and kept riding the go-kart the whole rest of the day around this field, just leaning and keeping that one broken corner off the ground. So I've always been a kind of kid who always wants to be on something in races. So that was then getting to actually compete with flags and like trying to pass people for the first time hooked me. And I got lapped like 10 times. I was the worst out there, but I loved it because I was like, oh, I can figure this out. Like, you know, give me some more time. But it didn't pan out. I didn't get to do it anymore as a kid. But then once I got out of college and kind of got a couple of years of working under my belt and bought a cart, that's when I went and started competing more regularly at the local kart track. And my first experiences out there were pretty similar, like going out like, hey, I'm getting better. I only got lapped twice tonight. You know what I mean? To eventually within that same year, winning a heat race and winning a couple of features. So that all happened pretty quickly for me. But yeah, when I first got out there, I didn't trust the tires and, you know, wasn't confident enough to go fast. So at least at first, it was just the first few weeks out there, I was like, hey, I only got lapped 3 times, only got lapped 2 times. And I stayed on the lead lap. That was a big progression for me. It was a lot of fun. I didn't care the whole time. I was just hooked by being out there and getting to do it at all.
Yep. That's fantastic. Miss Jen, your first time, first HPD, first race, pick your choice, whatever it was. You got any good story?
I got lots of good stories.
Jen's got stories. Jen's story per lap is pretty high.
Okay, yeah.
I think the one that was most memorable was me trying to get up that stinking hill.
In New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
So
that was hilarious. I felt like such a fool. But I'll tell you what, everybody was so supportive. I had more people in the stands. I had the corner workers. Everybody was cheering me on.
Yeah.
So Jen had, I think she borrowed my car for like 3 days after I taught her how to drive a stick for like an hour.
There's no hills in Delaware.
There's no hills in Delaware. Plus, it's a new car. So we go to Thompson. She races for like 8 or 9 laps, something like that. It was horrible. It was one of those foggy, rainy. So she really didn't get comfortable with the car. Plus, it's a 1984 Mustang, and she's used to a 2017 BMW. Little different clutch. So next race is New Hampshire, and this is her. I think it was your first lap, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to New Hampshire, you go around the New Hampshire, the NASCAR track, and then you make this sharp right-hand turn to go up this hill. And the hill's pretty steep.
It's a steep hill.
And Jen got trapped on the inside. And you just see her, like, she's going up the hill at like 2 miles an hour. Well, maybe 10 miles an hour. And then she's going up the hill at like 5 miles an hour. And then she's going up the hill at like barely moving. And then she just parks it right there on the side. So I'm on the radio. And I'm talking to her, and I'm like, "All right, don't worry about anything." She's getting a little excited. She's getting a little antsy about the, sitting on. I'm like, "Here's what you do: put your right foot on the brake, put your left foot on the clutch. Okay. Now start lifting up your left foot off the clutch. Move your right foot from the brake, and just put the gas down to the floor. Just all of it. I don't want some of it. I want all of it."
Did it work?
Yeah. So she starts jetting up there, and from where we were standing on the grandstand. From where we could stand, we could see the flag stand off to the side, and they're like doing this high five wave thing, but she goes rolling just by at like 3 miles an hour because she went up the hill, and then she was good for the rest of the day.
It was. Well, so like it's no joke. When I said I learned to drive stick
on the track,
it was not a lie.
It's not a lie. No.
Now look at her.
That's right. Yeah, she's a crazy person. Miss Vicki, your first time on track, HPD, race, whatever. Story time.
It's all such a blur now.
Story time.
It's a blur. I think our first time on track was with the Capri, and it was a hit. It was a blast.
It was.
I drove it like a street car.
Yeah, right down the middle.
It was embarrassing.
Like a Pinto in the middle of traffic.
Yep.
I did. I was driving it like I was driving a car.
She had her left hand on top of the wheel.
Yep. One
and
on the
right
stick
hand
shift.
on the stick shift.
Just chilling.
Just cruising.
Just driving.
Cruising. Hey, the fast people love drivers like that, though. I gotta say, those of us who are out there picking them up and putting them down, love to see you out there. Have fun.
No, that was I was just our first time out when we were dressed as the Avengers with the Avenger car, and we kind of came fast and hard. with just our theming,
really?
With just our theming and just our presence, I think was
our theme was strong. Our game was weak.
Yes, we came to play.
But you finished.
We did.
Yeah, we did finish.
We actually did pretty well. Actually, it's one of our better races, which is sad. But anyway, so same race, same place. I'm out there. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I finally, I think we were doing 30-minute stints. So we were changing drivers like they were going to know tomorrow. And I think I was on my third stint of the day, and it was going to end the day. So I'm starting to get comfortable. I know the track now. I'm going around, and all of a sudden this one car goes by, and I'm like, oh, I know those guys. I'm going to follow them because I know they know how to drive. So I'll just go and stay with them for a while and keep up with them, and I'll learn the track, and I'll learn what the line is, and everything will go great. Except I knew who they were. And I knew what car it was, but I didn't know the name of the car. See, I didn't know that those two were the same thing. So it was our friends over in the Three Pedal Mafia, and they were driving the black RX-7. The problem was that I didn't know that the black RX-7 was also the car that I knew as Black Betty. Now Black Betty.
Whoa, Black Betty.
Yeah, Rambutan. So
it's Bam-a-lam.
Whatever. It's Rambutan when I'm around. But anyway.
That's right.
But it turns out that Black Betty is a bit of a beast. So I'm in a 1974 Capri, my first time on track, with questionable tires and much, much less horsepower and much less tire. And I try keeping up with Black Betty, and I ran out of talent. So I clipped the left side tire on the dirt. I start skidding off to the right towards the tire wall. I do what I know I shouldn't do now, but I thought was smart then, was instead of going straight into the tire wall, I spin the car around so that I go in kind of sideways, kind of spreading out the damage. I get buried in a tire wall and proceed to end the race 10 minutes early because they can't get me out of the tire wall, and there's only 10 minutes left, but so they just canceled the race. And
it's over now. It's over now, Bill.
Yeah, we're good enough. So we started the break early. So that was my my story. And then we go for a track walk. And the only part of the track walk that Vicki and Mia, who came with us, the only part that they paid attention to was they went walking over to the tire wall and started taking like 50 pictures with their phone.
Yep.
Ouch.
Nothing else. Anyway, so that was it. So
that will stick with you though, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's actually the only time I've been off track with. No, I can't say that. That was the first time I went off track at a race. I've been off track one more time when the brakes did not cooperate with me. But
blaming the victim sounds like.
Oh no, they were on fire.
Oh wow.
So they went away. But anyway, so those are two of our new questions for our storytime things, and we thought
cool.
That would be fun. So thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.